I'm Paul Evely from Kensa Heat Pumps Limited. We are the UK's only manufacturer of ground source heat pumps based down in Cornwall. I'm going to talk to you today a bit about our new product, Shoebox NX, and about network heat pumps. Okay, I'm going to kind of look at how do we decarbonise UK heating and cooling. Okay, but before I do that, I thought we might just think about why we need to decarbonise heating and cooling, and that gives me an excuse to play one of our marketing team's videos, so give me a second. The funky music. Okay, that's enough of that. So look, the key message there is we need to stop burning stuff, guys. Okay, so we need to stop burning stuff so that we're not putting CO2 into the atmosphere, and so that our air is cleaner and all those good things. But also because we use too much energy to heat our homes. Okay, so we need to think about how we literally use a lot less energy. Now, when we talk about decarbonisation, we're really talking about electrification. Okay, electrify our heating and then convert our electricity systems to renewables. And that's great, okay? But one of the reasons that we believe that ground source heat pumps, and in particular network ground source heat pumps, are the tool for that, for our homes, is because if you look at the new product we launched, right, that's 5 times more efficient than a gas boiler, okay? Now, if you think about that, that means that if we don't introduce any renewables into our electricity system, and we just put ground source heat pumps into all our homes, okay, we will need to generate a fifth of the electricity than if we carry on, a fifth of the energy than if we carry on burning gas. And that means we could, with gas-powered power stations, still burn 20% of the gas that we're burning now. Okay, so the key message is use less energy to heat our homes, right? And the reason that's really important is because if we're comparing heat pumps of whatever type against any of the other heating technologies, the best you can get out of any of the other heating technologies is 1-to-1. Okay, you create as much of the energy, you create all of the energy you need to heat your homes. Okay, so sooner or later, someone's going to come along and talk about electric boilers, or in our case, we're pulling out storage heaters that use direct electric to heat the home. Okay, so if there's any other reason for talking about heat pumps of whatever type, it's that. It's reducing the actual amount of energy needed to heat our homes to a fifth of what it is now. Okay? So then, how? Okay. So anyone who's familiar with Kensa might have noticed this week that we launched a new heat pump. Okay? Now, Kensa's been making ground source heat pumps for 25 years, and we've been making a shoebox heat pump, which has been installed on networks in apartment blocks and in new build and retrofit homes for 10 years, okay? So what are we trying to do here? Well, what we're trying to do is come up with a product that is a sweet spot heat pump that covers the whole market, okay? So Shoebox NX is designed to suit 60% of UK homes, okay? Now, the reason that's important is because everyone thinks you can't put heat pumps in most of our homes, okay? The government talks about hard-to-treat homes. The local authorities talk about hard-to-treat social housing, right? Now, the way that the story that we're telling, the reason we're saying this is the future of our heating systems is because we're saying that ground source heat pumps networked on arrays of ground array in our streets allows us to treat those hard-to-treat homes. They're not hard to treat, you just have to choose the right technology. Okay. I've lost it. There you go. So, quick overview of the product. So we set out, it was a bit of a moonshot product. We tried to take all the know-how we had in our existing high-performance heat pumps and put it into a box the size of our existing small compact heat pumps that we can put in an airing cupboard. Okay, and that gives you Shoebox NX. It fits into 0.2 of a cubic meter I can show you on the next slide, but it's designed to fit an airing cupboard. We talk to house builders to understand what house builders think their consumers will need in a heat pump. How do we address the consumer perception of heat pumps? The consumer impression is that, the consumer impression is that they're large, that they're noisy, that they're in your garden. We're saying, no, it's small, it's quiet, it's in your airing cupboard. And in the dream state, in the end state, when everyone's got a heat pump in their house, they won't care about it. Nobody worries about their boiler. They just assume it works. And we need to move the whole of society away from being worried about heat pumps and into the situation of going, yeah, it's a box in the cupboard, God knows what it does, but my house is warm. Okay, and so Shoebox NX was targeted at a consumer-oriented heat pump that they can trust. Okay, so we changed the design, we made it a bit prettier, ironically, because it's going to go in a cupboard. Okay, it's high performance in a small box, so the published figures is that it's got a COP of 4.26, but realistically on a network, we're expecting the ground temperatures to be above 0, and we're expecting to be operating around a SCOP of above 5. Okay, so again, high performance, small box. Okay, from talking to house builders, and we are talking to quite a lot of house builders now about networked Shoebox NXs, the expectation is that it increases property value. Okay, so we will see, and we are starting to see, that consumers will perceive that a house with a ground source heat pump in particular is more attractive than a house with an air source, and certainly more attractive than a house with a gas boiler, because people are starting to buy into the idea that gas boilers aren't the thing anymore. Okay. We targeted and we have designed it with the expectation of it maximising the possible compliance scores, so looking at Part O, Part L and SAP. Obviously at this point we don't have the SAP scores for the heat pump yet. Okay. Fundamental to the way we think about our heat pumps is that they're kind of fit and forget. Okay, so there's no maintenance for the heat pump itself. We expect it to last 25 years. We're not asking anyone to go in and service that heat pump. Naturally, anything with a water tank in needs a check every year, but the heat pump itself doesn't require servicing. It's discreet, no box in the garden, no fan, nothing to look at there. Okay, and as I've said earlier, we see it as suitable for all properties, from high-rise apartments to terraces and to 3 or 4 bedroom homes. We've put a lot of work into understanding the needs of the installers. Okay, so designed for easy installation and maintenance. Every part that can be replaced without pulling the heat pump out, but also there's no modules to pull out or that kind of thing. So it's designed to be minimal effort if you do have to take some intervention to maintain it. Obviously, it's made in Britain, which we're really proud of. As every part of our supply chain that we can have in the UK is in the UK. Obviously, some of the off-the-shelf components we buy are imported because that's where they're made. But for us, it's really important that we build our product in the UK and employ UK people in manufacturing in the UK. We're a manufacturer at heart. Okay, so let's talk about networking. So how do we make it cost effective? So obviously, everyone who understands how ground source works, there's an array to put in the ground. Okay. We started deploying network heat pumps 10 years ago. It started by actually fitting shoebox heat pumps into apartment blocks. Okay, so the advantage there is put a ground array, connect every heat pump, one in each apartment, to the array. The array becomes more efficient by sharing it, so we don't have to dig the boreholes quite as deep. Okay, and then there's some other advantages I'll get to. But so that is actually the model that we're proposing for the whole of the UK. Okay, it looks just like the gas network. Okay, back in the 60s and 70s, someone came along, put a whole bunch of pipes in the ground, and then we connected people's housing to them. Okay, our proposal, and we've set up a business that does this, is that we fund arrays of pipes in the ground, buried in the streets, charge a connection fee just like you would with your gas boiler, and then you just pay for your electricity bill. Okay. So 21st century equivalent of the gas network. It is actually, if you do the sums, it is the most efficient way in terms of energy use to heat the home. Okay, 20% cheaper over life than air source, 8% cheaper if we do funded scale ground arrays than installation for air source. Okay, so absolutely the way we treat all of those terraced houses that no one knows what to do with is to come up with a network that is pre-installed and funded by investors, and then everyone gets to connect just like they do today. So in terms of consumer familiarity, just look the same. There's a white box in the cupboard, there's a thing I'm connected to, I pay a standing charge, and I pay my electricity bill. Of course, once you've done that, the network in the ground gives you a bunch of other advantages. Okay, so we can increase the efficiency of the heat pumps by starting to feed heat into the network. Okay, so one of the things that we've started doing is actually looking at where you've got your ground array, you've got a network of heat pumps connected to it, but you've also got a heat source, be it a data center, be it a factory, that kind of thing. Now, the benefit of that is by increasing the ground array temperature, particularly in the summer when you're not using much heat, you get some seasonal storage, but you also get a further increase of the coefficient performance of the heat pump. Okay, so that allows us to actually reuse waste heat. So instead of using energy to get rid of heat and then using more energy to put it in, we recycle it, store it in the ground, use it later. Okay. The other thing we can start to do with ground source is look at storage during the day. So because the ground temperature is largely constant, we can run our heat pumps outside of peak. So when you start looking at integrating with smart controls, we can actually, we've demonstrated this using controllers, working with, for example, the Octopus Smart Tariff, the Agile Tariff, where we run the heat pump when it's not needed, store the heat overnight, and then use that heat later when the energy bill is high. Okay, and there are points where you can get to almost zero energy cost. Last thought, I talked briefly about cooling. Okay, an advantage of using a ground array is that you can choose to passively cool rather than actively cool. So active cooling, run the compressor, reverse the whole thing so that you're taking heat out. We pump that heat into the ground and can use it later. Okay, but actually passive cooling, I've got a source of water at about 8 to 12 degrees. Okay, I cannot run the compressor at all. Pump that water through your cooling system and you get very, very low cost cooling. We've estimated that the coefficient of performance of passive cooling is about 10. Okay, so we ran a test property in Cardiff 2 summers ago. The outside temperature was about 34 degrees. We weren't running the heat pump. We were just running a circulation pump, and we maintained the internal temperature of the house at a nice, comfy 20 degrees. All fine, almost no cost. The last thing that you can do is you can connect the system to PV panels. I don't mean electrically. So what we've demonstrated is if we cool a PV panel, we can use that heat, but the act of cooling the PV panel increases its efficiency by about 10%. So if we choose not to use the array for passive cooling, we can actually store the energy from a PV panel and increase the efficiency of the PV panel. So when you get to networked heat pumps, you actually then enable the more complex heat networks that allow us to make the optimal use of energy on a town level scale. Okay. So, combination of Shoebox NX, high performance heat pump in a really small box, and networking is the way that we decarbonize 60% of homes that already exist and almost all of new build. And that's why it's a sweet spot product. Thanks very much.